So today we are going to be having a quick look at tessellations. Now, you may not have heard of tessellations before, and that's totally fine, because in this lesson, we're going to be looking at what you need to know about them. That is the point of the lessons. All right. So let me rather share it like this. That one. All right, and I pull up my chat. There we go. So tessellations are all based around rotation, translation, and reflection of at least one shape. So hopefully, because you've done Foundation 1, you know what these three are. If you don't, I'm going to quickly go through them now. So rotation is if you have a shape and you're literally just changing its orientation, you are not changing its size at all, but according to a center of rotation, you might be rotating it like this, or you might just be rotating it like this. Translation is if you have your shape, you are not changing its orientation, you are not changing its size, you are simply changing its position. So a translation is also known as shifting. So you can shift up or shift down, shift left or shift right, and that is a translation. And a reflection is like if you look in a mirror, you're going to have a reflection line, and then it will reflect to that side or reflect to this side. So tessellations can be made with, as I said, either one shape or more than one shape. So if you have one shape, for example, looking at a wall has bricks, each brick is a rectangle, and it is being tessellated through by translation. So you have one shape and it's being translated horizontally across, and it's also being translated horizontally, vertically down, and then a little bit across as it keeps going. And each time to create you a new row. That's how it happens. Now you might be saying, okay, I can follow that, but you still haven't told me what a translation, what a tessellation is. So a tessellation is simply a repetition of a shape or more than one shape where they are together completely. There is no overlap of the shapes and there is no spaces between the shape. All right. So we can see in the brick wall, there's no overlap between the bricks, and there's also no space between the bricks. All right. So having a look at the next tessellation, you can see that we've got just a rectangle over there that is now being rotated to like a 45-degree and then translated downwards through each of those, and then rotated like that, translated across, and then translated downwards. And it's repeating to create that shape over there, or that pattern. Now, what's really interesting is that tessellations can actually create a feeling of looking at a 3D picture by using only 2D objects. And all of that is to do with shading, which is very interesting actually. Because if you have a look at this, it kind of looks like it goes into the page and that the one edge is out and the one edge is in. And that's because the darker bit generally is the in and the lighter bit is generally the out. And you'll find that with painting and stuff as well, that you can create a lot of depth if you can have that kind of transition from light to dark. That's generally what gives depth. And it's not only with rectangles that this can work, you can also work it very nicely with triangles. So here you have one triangle and you're rotating it and rotating it and rotating, etc. Or you can have a right angled triangle that creates something like this. But more importantly, you see again, everything is touching, there are no gaps between. So if you decide that you want to have more than one shape, you can totally do that. So this shape over here, this is a hexagon because there are 6 sides to it. And then we have the small triangle. So hexagon and triangles, hexagon, triangles, hexagon, triangles, hexagon, etc. And it moves on like that. Or you could have something like this, where you have a square and a triangle going around this hexagon. And then you can keep going like that. And you can see that in between these shapes, there's no space. All right. So I've got a nice little animation to show you about how you can actually create your shape, your perfectly individualized shape. And if you follow this kind of method, you will always create a shape that tessellates. All right, I'm going to make sure that I am sharing computer sound. Maximize, play.
How to make a tessellation. A tessellation is a repeating pattern created out of shapes fitted edge to edge without overlaps. A tessellation is created by rotating, translating, or reflecting at least one kind of shape.
So in case my explanation of rotating, translating, and reflecting was not clear, there you saw the rotating as the hexagon rotated out of the original one, translation because it's just a shift, and the reflection where it does that sort of shape, or that sort of motion.
They can be standard geometric shapes that we know, or we could make our own shapes that will tessellate.
So you can see this sort of shape is quite complex. The question is, will this tessellate? And there we can see that it does, because that's the original shape. And we can see that it does tessellate because we've got those 4 that fit into all 4 sides.
Let's try making our own tessellation shape of a crocodile using a square. If we make a cut on the one side, we can separate a piece from the square. We can move this piece to the right-hand side and then join it to the square.
And that right there, that is the trick for creating your shape that will tessellate, is you can cut out whatever shape you want, but this that you've cut out needs to be added on to one of the other 3 sides. Doesn't matter which one, just one of them.
We can repeat this process of cutting, separating, and moving on the other 2 sides. Now we can tile this piece. So, we can rotate the shape one way to...
So rotation up to there, and we can see that this bit is now fitting back into there. Remember, this bit was what we cut out from the top, so therefore it has to be able to fit in there.
Fit it on top and at the bottom.
And the tail, which we cut out from the bottom, it is now fitting in there.
And another way to fit it on the left and the right.
So once again, the mouth is fitting into the top of the back. The difference now is you're not taking the mouth of another shape into the original. It's the mouth of the original into the back of another shape.
We then continue to place more of them, and we will see that there are no spaces between the shapes, and the edges meet exactly. You can now try this at home.
And that's quite amazing. The fact that you had, as I said, quite a complex shape, and yet it fits perfectly with rotation, translation, a bit of reflection, and there you go. You can tile this perfectly with no gaps. Which is really amazing, I think. And there's many, many, many examples of tessellations out there. So you can have something very simple like this. So I've chosen a picture website and had a look at these pictures. So here is a simple arrow, and these arrows align vertically, and then the darker ones align once either rotated or reflected. You can have a look at either and push down a bit to fill in the gap. There's no space between them. That is a wonderful tessellation over there. This is a far more interesting one. So this is like a unicorn shape, and it's been cut out specifically so that the tail can fit into the front leg, and that this front leg into body is actually the top of the horse with the head and the horn. So that sort of thing is far more like the crocodile example that we had a look at. You can have a very simple shape. So you have that bit there, and that bit there. And this is simply just staggered a little bit and put together, fits perfectly together. And this looks incredibly three-dimensional when having a look at it. You can have something like this, where you have just that black and white shape, or even just the white or just the black, and we rotate it, we reflect it, and rotate a little bit, translate it up and down a bit, and there you go. There's no spaces between. Perfect tessellation. Here's another one with arrows, black and white. Now the arrows are vertical instead of horizontal, but the exact same thing applies. So this would be classified as doing it with one shape because it is simply one arrow. Some Christmas trees, Christmas in July. So here you have the green trees and the more kind of beigey trees. So all it is a tree, and it's rotated through, and the tree is cut specifically so that it can then fit in over there. And these are quite easy to do because it's actually just this rectangle, and you create a bit of a zigzag over there. You take this one and you create a bit of a zigzag on the other side, and just like that, you've got one half of the tree there, one half of the tree there, another half there, another half there, and they have to fit together because they were made from one rectangle here and one rectangle there. This is quite a common one, the fish. So here is a fish, and this has been cut out specifically so that the head goes up into the other fish, and it goes into the tail of the other fish in front. And I mean, the coloring of this makes it wonderful, and yet to create this kind of fish is not very difficult. You just need to take this little bit, reflect it out to be there, this little bit, reflect it out to be there. This bit of the tail, we're going to put to the front, and there you go. So just like we cut out the pieces for the crocodile, you cut out the pieces to create your fish here. All right, here you have your shape. This again, this looks incredibly three-dimensional, and yet it's just to do with the shading, the fact that you've got light on the top, slightly darker on the left, and much darker on the right. And that light and dark combination creates that 3D look in the picture. One of the most famous ones is the lizard. In many, many, many examples you have a look at on the internet, you'll find pictures of this lizard tessellation. And once again, I mean, this is an incredibly complex cutout, but again, it's been cut out specifically so that it will fit specifically. So the head will fit over there, one leg will fit in there, one leg fits over there, another leg will fit over there, the tail fits into there. And it's amazing how it just works. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of the early examples of tessellations, and that's how come it's so well known. And then last one is this one. So this one is now a bit of a tougher one because the arrows are thinning at the end, and yet you take it from one point, for example, that one, and you have an arrow going out, an arrow going in, an arrow going out, an arrow going in, an arrow going out, an arrow going in. And as it goes around, because you're using the same one, they are fitting together beautifully. And this head of the arrow has been cut specifically so that they will meet perfectly over there every time. and then as the joiner. So if you didn't have these arrows there, it wouldn't be a tessellation because you wouldn't really be meeting. But because you have them as going around all the way through, and then as this point here, going around and you join everything, this is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tessellation there.